Something to consider now that we know that Alexander Smirnov was working as a Russian agent to once again try to demolish the U.S. presidential electoral system in this country. And now that he has been handcuffed, he has been he has a GPS ankle bracelet on. And there is an argument right now in court as to whether or not he should be released into the general public. You know, my feeling is hell no, put him in a cell and keep him there until this shit's resolved. But anyway, James Comer, who is the dumb shit Republican from Kentucky, he's the chairman of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, and another jerk-off, jacket-off Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, who is the House Judiciary Committee chairman. And then we have, of course, the Q-bitch, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, from right here in the buckle of the Bible Belt. Now, the three of these people have been pushing this bullshit put out there by Alexander Smirnov for months. That he was, well, you know the whole story. He was an impeccable witness. He was an FBI informant. Oh, my God, this is the key to bringing down Joe Biden, this and that and this and that. Well, you know, he is the star witness of this bullshit impeachment of Joe Biden. And at least one legal expert now thinks there should be some severe penalties for these Christian fascist lawmakers, whose names I just mentioned, who pushed the story of this Russian agent, Alexander Smirnov. Former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner, who's a frequent appearance on MSNBC, he was on last night with Lawrence O'Donnell, and he made the very cogent and coherent statement that any of U.S. lawmakers who knowingly perpetuated the lies told by this Alexander Smirnov, this Russian agent, should be investigated themselves criminally. These are not people, these Christian fascists, so-called Republicans in our legislative branch of government. These are not people who are just pushing an agenda to get rid of Joe Biden. These are people who, it's becoming very clear, comprise a fifth column in this United States, in these United States, to operate according to Vladimir Putin. Putin wants to see this country on its knees. So does the orange vomit, Donald Trump. Putin and Trump are both white, male, Christian fascists. Putin more so than Trump on the Christian part, but Trump plays that Christian bullshit where all the evangelicals worship at his feet now. So these Republicans, these white Christian Republicans in this country, these Christian fascists who have been promoting this bullshit, shouldn't they be investigated? Kirschner said this, quote, "The big question now is what will the Republican members of Congress do now that they know that everything that Kirschner said are lies and have been peddled by Fox News. Will they continue to peddle these lies?" Well, I think the answer is very clear. Jacket off Jim Jordan and this Comer prick have been all over television saying, well, yeah, it doesn't change anything. The investigation will go on. The impeachment will continue. This is madness. Oh, you know that. Yeah. Anyway, Kirschner was in agreement with Representative Dan Goldman, a Democrat from New York, if you remember, was one of the first impeachment trial prosecutors of the Orange Bastard. And Goldman earlier called out his Republican colleagues for being played by the Russians as we're getting closer and closer to what is going to be the most critical election in the history of this country. Now, a lot of us said that in 2016. And then we saw what happened with 4 years of this filthy fascist dictator wannabe at the helm of the country. Then we said it again in 2020, and people listened, and Biden was elected. But now, here we are, because now, you see, Donald Trump and the scum around him have learned where the levers are in a democratic system that can be used to destroy democracy. They've seen it now. They know how to delay to the 10th power. They know how to use the courts. They know how to lie, cheat, and steal. They know how to use a perfect fascist technique that was used by the fascist Russians who overthrew or who were involved in the Russian Revolution and immediately set up a fascist dictatorship. And that is confusion. Keep everybody totally confused, off balance, because within that framework, then, the fascist demons can operate with impunity. It's an old trick, and it still works. And this is what's going on. I know you agree that this is what's going on in this country. This demon bastard Trump and his Christian fascist supporters are doing every single thing that they can do to keep the waters all stirred up and muddy, to keep everybody confused, off balance. You know, what's going on today? What's going on tomorrow? Well, where does it stand in that court case? Well, what about these indictments? Well, what about this over here? Well, what about? Meanwhile, the business of the country has come to a full stop. You're aware of that. Because of these fascist Christian demons who are in the U.S. House, everything has come to a stop. Oh, excuse me, except the impeachment of Joe Biden. Dan Goldman, earlier yesterday, also on MSNBC, said, quote, "It is now coming out in 2024, and Republican members of Congress are once again witting or unwitting agents of Russian intelligence, peddling a false narrative that is Russian disinformation in an effort to interfere in the election and boost Donald Trump." Goldman added, "It is shocking that 8 years later we're still dealing with Russian interference and the Republican Party is still welcoming it and facilitating it." Do I know you do, and I know I do, understand the severity of this situation. But when I think about the people who stand in these Trump Nuremberg-style rallies while this blubbering idiot misspeaks and says shit up on the stage that is utterly ridiculous. I'm not talking about his lies and his bullshit. That's just standard operating procedure for this orange messiah. I'm talking about the garbled shit that comes out of his mouth. And he has the temerity to suggest that Joe Biden has a brain problem. Oh, my God. Anyway, Kirschner also said in this interview on MSNBC last night that any member of Congress who pushes what is essentially a Russian propaganda effort that relied on this Glenn Kirschner, that person, quote, should be investigated for being part and parcel of a conspiracy to defraud the United States and to interfere in our elections. Now, that's exactly one of the cases against Trump. The fraudulent electors case against him. The January 6th case against this son of a bitch. It is essentially the same charges that Trump tried to defraud the United States and interfere in our elections. So there is the entire cadre of white male Christian fascists in the U.S. Congress who are continuing the work of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Does this not really get to you? I mean, this makes me so insanely angry when I think about what is happening. And I wonder why the Biden campaign does not have, they've got tons of money, why they don't have commercials on every fucking television network and station in this country pointing out example after example of Trump and Putin's attempt to destroy democracy in this country. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Now, if Comer and Jacket Off Jim and the Q bitch, if any of these people were prosecuted, the prosecution would run into all kinds of problems because of the First Amendment. See what I mean about how they used the Constitution to destroy the Constitution? And the argument would be that, okay, they were making false statements or even promoting false claims from a foreign power is not in any way a crime. How could it be a crime? We have a First Amendment that protects speech. And the propaganda up to this point that has woven its way into this Christian fascist mindset in Congress has not directly called for the overthrow of the U.S. government. Therefore, the free speech part of the First Amendment applies. All they're doing, the argument would be, is parroting a bunch of bullshit from a Russian intelligence officer. And that's where it would stay. I mean, who's going to take the charge seriously that Trump and Putin and Comer and Jacket Off Jim and God knows how many of these Christian devils that are loose in our legislative branch of government are really trying to overthrow the government? Oh, come on, Malloy, where did you come up with that shit, right? Now, the prosecutors in Vegas who busted Smirnov accuse him of lying to his handler in the FBI about having direct proof that Biden received the bribes and all this other shit from the Ukrainian energy Burisma, right? Of course. But both the House Judiciary Chair, this crazy bastard from Ohio, Jacket Off Jim, and the House Oversight Chair, James Comer, this nutcase from Kentucky, Jesus Christ, they both now have backtracked on their claim and reliance that Smirnov was at the heart of their case. When for 2 years, that's all they could say. We need to see those FBI documents because Smirnov is telling the truth. He is from Jesus. He is a Christian man. He is telling the truth. Biden is just on and on and on. And of course, the duped media in this country, and God damn them for doing this, just made story after story after story out of this bullshit. Now, the media did not come out and say, well, obviously, Joe Biden must have taken a bribe. No, they didn't. And these son of a bitches, these Christian fascists in our House of Representatives have not come out and said, let's overthrow the government and form an alignment with Putin. No, of course not. But didn't your grandma ever tell you the proof is in the pudding? Look what they're doing. Look what media has done in this country, or have done. In so many instances, I'm not talking about these filthy pigs on Fox or these online or other programs on certain cable networks that are run by fascist morons. I'm talking about the way the New York Times or the Washington Post constantly hacking at Joe Biden. What the fuck is wrong with these people? And Comer now, this idiotic hillbilly jerkwad now claims that the impeachment inquiry is not reliant on the documentation that the FBI provided. And then everything turned out to be bullshit. Oh, well, we might have talked about it for 2 years, but no, we got other shit. Where is it, dude? And then Jacking Off Jim, this psychotic bastard, had the nerve to stand there and say, well, the fact that this guy turns out to be a Russian agent, that doesn't change the facts. Doesn't change the facts. You don't have any facts, you dork. I mean, you've never had any facts. So what do we have? We have an entire political party in this country that has been and is being played by the Russian fascist dictator and the American fascist wannabe dictator, Putin and Trump. And these miserable son of a bitches in the so-called Republican Party in the House and the Senate just go about their merry way, continuing continuing to rip and tear and get their claws into the fabric of this country, our Constitution, our efforts to try to improve ourselves, and they're trying to destroy it and bring it down and kill it. Why are we letting them?
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.